Good evening. It's 6:30. The meeting will come to order. I want to welcome you to the Pasco School Board meeting this evening. Thank you for attending, and thank you for your interest in Pasco Public Schools. Understand that while it may appear that the board is moving quickly on important matters, there have been previous opportunities for discussions on issues either in earlier meetings, study sessions, or in board workshops, which are also open public meetings. Each director has had sufficient time to study the issues, ask questions, and obtain satisfactory answers from district staff or through their own independent research. As directors, we each strive to understand all of the issues brought before us and make decisions that we believe are in the best interest of all Pasco students and the taxpayers who provide funding. Board study sessions and board meeting proceedings are recorded for broadcast on PSC TV, Channel 1, Charter Cable Channel 191, and all study session and board recordings are also available on YouTube. At 4:30 this afternoon, we had a study session on board governance, so that will be available on 191 and on YouTube. And finally, we're fortunate to have 3 student board representatives, 2 of which are here with us tonight. They cannot legally vote on issues, but are a very important part of our team and the board's decision-making process. They participate in many board activities and functions throughout the year and are vital in helping keep our focus on putting students first. So with that, we'll move on to the flag salute. And we'll have the board reps lead us in that.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Smith, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Christensen?
Present.
Dr. Richardson?
Present.
Ms. Lanigan?
Present.
Ms. Lace?
Present.
Mr. Lehrman?
Present.
Mr. Mendoza?
Present.
Mrs. Phillips?
Present.
Mr. Knight?
Excused.
Excused. And Neff, Evan Neff. We have no special recognition tonight, and so we'll move on to approval of the minutes.
Mr. President, I move to approve the minutes of July 26, 2016.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the regular meeting minutes from July 26, 2016. Those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Regular meeting minutes from July 26, 2016 are approved. Next, we'll have the agenda review.
There are no additions or changes this evening, and we will not be requesting an executive session.
Okay, it's time for audience comments. In just a moment, I'll invite audience members up for comments. All comments and questions will be noted. If you have a question that you feel like the board has not given sufficient response to, please ensure that your name and contact information are left in the back left corner there so that we can get a hold of you to have further conversation. We will also have audience comments that will be solicited after each report or action item topic. If your comments are in regard to a report or action item topic, agenda items number 9 and 10 there, please wait until that time, and I will invite you up to make comments to the board after the board discussion with district staff is complete. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. After a minute and a half, we will have a yellow folder held up over there, and that signifies that you have 30 seconds remaining. After 2 minutes, we'll hold up the red folder signifying that your time is done. So the microphone is open for audience comments. Seeing that there's no audience comments, we'll move on to communications, board communications, starting with Dr. Richardson.
This last week I was able to attend the McClintock Summer STEM presentations, which were fantastic. I think it's great that our students are able to participate in this. They work together in groups, and the groups gave presentations on their projects and did a wonderful job. I also attended a swim meet that was kind of a regional swim meet for youth here at the Memorial Pool last week, and was inspired by the skills and talents of these young people and their dedication to that, and it was quite the event. I know there's been some push in our district to get a swim team started, and I think I'm very supportive of that. I know Miss Whitney's nodding her head, and I think the district's aware of that. There's a group of people that would like to see that happen, and I'm definitely supportive of allowing these kids to continue their skills and development as our other local districts are able to do, including someone from Richland recently that's now in college but just missed becoming an Olympian by a few slots this year. Anyway, so I'd be very supportive of that going forward. I think having a goal to get that started by fall of next year would be fantastic. And so looking forward to hopefully seeing that happen.
I will pass.
I just wanted to congratulate the graduates that we had from New Horizon. We had a graduation ceremony for those students a couple weeks ago, I think. I can't remember what the date was. And then the Peak Partner lunch that we had. It's always great to start the year off, beginning the school year with the Peak Partners. I really appreciate those partnerships that we create with those business partners. I sat in a group with one of our schools, and they do a lot for the schools. Not only do they donate money to the schools, but they added a lot of suggestions and a lot of things that they're going to do for that school. So I really appreciate the partnerships that they bring to the schools and the families that they create with the schools.
Like 2 weeks ago was New Horizons graduation, and I was a few minutes late, but I got to congratulate some of my friends, and I was also able to attend the McClintock Elementary presentations and got to listen to those kids. And it just amazed me how they don't get nervous when they talk, and hopefully I can do the same like them too. So I kind of learned from that, yeah.
Hello, everyone. I was also able to attend the graduation for the New Horizons students. So it's one thing that never lets me down is how supportive Pasco is, and that's one thing that I will always be proud of. Listening to the student speaker at the graduation, I think her name was Gracie, I'm sorry if I got the name wrong, but her speech was really inspirational. She talked about some of the hardships she went through and how supportive and how grateful she was of how the staff, how her boyfriend, her family helped her. They never doubted her, and it's just a great thing to just hear the stories of students and all the hardships, because I mean, no matter where you're at, there's students who always struggle, who always give their best. And so I'm really proud of Pasco because I've been at several schools, at different schools and different districts, and all of my districts have been really supportive. But the thing about Pasco, it's I remember at the luncheon they asked us for one word that would describe our school district, and the word I chose was family, because everyone's just so supportive and comforting, and you build relationships here like no other place. And I always be grateful for the students, for the teachers and staff that have helped me throughout other schools, but Pasco just has this different atmosphere that I'm just so grateful. So yeah, that's the graduation. And the luncheon, I also got to meet some partners from the Peak, and I was lucky to speak to the principal and assistant principal from Ochoa, and a worker from WSU, and their partners were a cellular company. I can't remember their name, but it was really nice to see what goes behind the scenes, because I think we students, we take for granted how much the adults or how much the community puts into our education, into how we grow. And so it's really nice to see how people work together. And so I'm really grateful for those experiences, those events that I go to, because it's kind of eye-opening. And so I can never say thank you enough for that. And we tried, Evan and I, we tried going to the STEM presentations, but we were kind of late because we attended the luncheon. So, but it would have been nice to see the children present, and I know they'd probably be better speakers than I am. But I can't wait to attend their other events that I hope they're going to invite me to. So yeah, that's it. Thanks.
2 weeks ago, we had Representative Steve Theringer here from, I think he's from the peninsula over there. But he is the House Capital Budget Chair, and he was instrumental in helping us get some money that we used or will be using to do our A&E for the senior center. And he came and visited our district. We took him over to the senior center, and thank you to Randy and company who helped put that together. I think he was very impressed with that facility, and that's the first time I've been there too. It looks like it'll be a great facility once we get it fixed up, and it's got some nice features to it that will be helpful to us. Then we got in the car and drove around to several other schools in the district, and I think with him, as others who come from the other side of the state and come and see our area and our district, go away with a greater appreciation. So thank you to the staff who helped put that together, and that's it.
Also, congratulations to all of our summer graduates, and I'd also thank the district staff that puts in the extra time to help students that need the additional help and get those students graduated in the summer. And I know they also put in all that work near the end of the year and throughout the year to get our on-time graduates across that stage. So thanks to everybody. I missed the graduation after several months of staying home with our new baby. We were able to get away and go camping with the family for a week, so we had time to rest and recharge there. And I'd also like to say 2 weeks from today at 4:30, we'll have a study session, like we always have a study session. It will be, we've had comments this year and in past years also about consistency and why do students, not just SPED students, but we've gotten a lot of comments on we need consistency for SPED students, and they get moved around before the school year stops. So we'll have a report on what the district's doing to increase consistency and reduce those inconsistencies for those students. And then if we have to have students moved, we'll talk about why we have to have the students moved, and we've looked at all other options. After the board talks, we're not sure on the exact format yet, but we'll look to get some community voice here in our effort to increase community conversations. And so we'll take community comments and have a open discussion on this topic next 2 weeks from today, so the 4th Tuesday of the month. Thank you.
So I just wanted to quickly highlight, last week we spent 3.5 days in what we call Leadership Academy. This year we did something slightly different than in years past. On the first day, the first couple hours, it was all district staff, so anyone who was at work on that day was invited to attend a 2-hour presentation at the Red Lion with a consultant named Galen Emmanuel. And he speaks about a concept called shifting yes, or shift yes, and it's around creating a culture of where there's an increased or improved communication, interpersonal behavior, and creates what he calls a culture of fearless high-level engagement. So we spent the whole day with him on Monday, and at the end of that was culminated with us creating what we call our Pasco Promise, and it outlines what our stakeholders can expect to, how they can expect to interact with us around concepts like we say yes, we're present, we listen, we support each other, we embrace change and failure, and we choose positivity. So this Pasco Promise will be a foundational document for us moving forward, and we've already started rolling that out with a variety of different staff groups. Tomorrow I meet with the secretaries to roll it out. The week after that, with the nurses, and it'll be a highlight for us as we move forward this year. He was a phenomenal speaker and just an instrumental resource in our to set the tone for the 3.5 days that we spent together last week, and then obviously it set the tone for this next year. So we're excited about that.
All right, next we will move on to reports and discussions. Item number 9A, we have board governance, and Ms. Whitney will lead us in the second in a series of 3, talking about the governance work that the board and district have been doing.
So, good evening, Board President Lehrman, members of the board. I'm pleased to be in front of you again this evening, to deliver that second in a series of 3 presentations focused on our work around our board governance model. Tonight's presentation will give just a brief background and purpose of the overall structure of the model that is from a book by Randy Quinn and Linda Dawson called Coherence Governance, as well as the main focus would be to provide the purpose for what are called operational expectations and give an example of how those have already influenced the work of the district. So coherent governance is really the gold standard for school board governments. It is the mission of the board to set goals and monitor student achievement. So coherent governance tasks the day-to-day operations of the district to the superintendent and allows the board to oversee from a policy level, which directly impacts the outcomes for our district. Good governance as a choice consists of a series of policies that create a values-based system of governance that's focused on results. A key component of the governance model is the policies that are called operational expectations. And these policies translate the needs and expectations of our community into clear direction for the board or from the board to guide the day-to-day decision-making of our organization. It's the what of the organization. It allows then district staff to function with creativity, innovation, and proactivity, to be empowered within their line of authority to design and implement the how to meet the expectation of the board, the expectations of the board, and then by proxy, the expectations of the community. So the purpose of the operational expectations is to clearly communicate and define the criteria or the conditions the board would use to evaluate recommendations from the staff. This allows the board to govern in a way that defines the parameters for decision-making, while at the same time empowering district staff to function within their designated line of authority and expertise. Operational expectation policies have many subsets, things like student discipline, personnel administration, budget and finance planning, strategic planning, etc. This is an example of the board's instructional program operational expectations. These expectations were developed based on a collection of community input through one-on-one informal conversations, community forums, emails, etc., based on feedback we've heard from our employees, etc. At the heart of these bullets is the board's expectation based on owners' feedback and the feedback of our teachers that we systemically use data to assess progress of a guaranteed and viable curriculum based on Washington State learning standards. In order to do this, the board has established the expectation that board-adopted materials are available to all teachers, and that supports including training and mentoring our focus. Further, it's expected that there be a comprehensive system for reviewing how our curriculum is impacting student learning and making modifications that are when they're necessary or if they're appropriate. So one of the key bullets under operational expectation talks about developing and implementing with fidelity and accountability a guaranteed and viable curriculum. So a curriculum that we know is foundational for every student in Pasco and something that is reasonable for our teachers to deliver in a year's time, that is based on the Washington State Learning Standards. So that operational expectation was defined for us by the board during some retreat work over the course of last year. And based on that, we launched the items that are underneath on the slide, including a comprehensive material review process for ELA or English language arts and mathematics. We will continue that process through this next school year, encompassing science, social studies, PE, and related arts. So we also continued along meeting that operational expectation by starting our professional development series with a Jumpstart training, which was specifically designed around training our teachers about the standards. And then we went into a rigorous curriculum design process for English language arts and mathematics, and also layered in the English language proficiency standards. And that goes to delivering that guaranteed and viable curriculum. We learned about the standards, then we designed a curriculum guide that will help our teachers make sure that the curriculum that our students receive is foundational, so kids receive a similar experience, and that it's something that's reasonable to deliver over a year's time. The rigorous curriculum design process will continue in August, and we will be launching a professional development opportunity for all teachers around those curricular materials and those curriculum guides. So again, the direction from the board around developing and implementing with fidelity and accountability, a guaranteed and viable curriculum, that expectation drove the decision-making around how we rolled out that curriculum rollout. So again, this slide represents how those operational expectations are applied to the details of the work that we are tasked with supervision of on a day-to-day basis. So the last in the series of 3 will happen next week, and next board meeting, and we are going to be taking a deeper dive into the results policies, and I'll be talking about how those results policies interface with the strategic planning process, including plans to have some stakeholder involvement in doing what I'm calling a stakeholder work group in realigning our strategic plan to our results outcomes, and then getting some community and stakeholder feedback around what the work for at least the next year and possibly beyond needs to look like. So I'll be covering that next time. In addition, talking about the next steps that we'll be taking to continue to formalize our board governance model with the hope of bringing that full circle by the end of January. Is there any questions I can answer?
Thank you, Ms. Whitney.
Thank you.
Discussion between the board? We've been talking about this a lot lately, and we're all excited about it. We're excited also, something we talked about at the study session today is we've had goal planning sessions for the district, coming up with measurable goals for student achievement. And Ms. Whitney's helped craft those goals that the board's come up with into results policies, which we're excited to roll out in the near future. So everyone in the district, parents, students, teachers know what the vision is for miniature checkpoints for different grade levels, so that we know that we're on the right track for student achievement. So we're really excited about that. Okay. Next, we'll move on to, well, actually, I'll open it up here. I said I'd do this. Open it up to the public. If you have any questions for the board or Ms. Whitney, please address the microphone. Questions on our governance that Ms. Whitney talked about, or the policies that we've been writing. Okay, with no questions or comments from the community, we'll move on to the next report, item 9B.
So if I could just quickly introduce to you, this is Assistant Superintendent Garrick Bowles. He is bringing forward our first board report focused on results. One of the things that the board asked for at the end of the year is a series of board reports this year that are results driven. So this is our first in a series and our first attempt at this type of series. So I appreciate Eric, new to the district and new to a series of board reports. So we appreciate your efforts on our behalf.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening, President Lehrman, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to kick off this inaugural results series of reports, and it's my pleasure to talk a little bit about the status of college and career readiness this evening. Before I get started, I want to introduce three colleagues who've really been instrumental in helping me put this work together. And unfortunately, two of them can't be here tonight for very legitimate reasons. And that would be Suzanne Hall, who's now the Executive Director of Professional Development, Curriculum rather, and Professional Development, and Brian Levitt, the Director of College and Career Readiness. And Brian's at a work-related engagement this evening, and Suzanne needed to head out this afternoon as well. I'd also like to introduce one of our newest colleagues, Shelley Hatch, who's in the back there. Go ahead and stand up, Shelley. And Shelley's going to be leading work. She's the Director of Federal Programs and Assessment. She's going to be leading some of the work around really aligning assessment systems and making them user-friendly for all of our constituents. So, what we're going to focus on tonight are a couple of baseline data points and then a few initiatives that we believe, if done well and with fidelity, will really lever the whole concept of college and career readiness for our students. And my first question would be, well, why is that important? So in 1973, only about 28% of the jobs across the United States required some level of post-secondary education. Right around the corner in 2020, we're looking at 65% of all jobs in our economy requiring some level of post-secondary education. So, you know, we're famous for buzzwords, for lack of a better term, in public education. But college and career readiness really isn't a buzzword. It's a discipline, a focus that a school system must maintain so that their students have the opportunity to compete in our economy. So then how do we get there? And so we think some of the short answers are our new state learning standards, and I'll expound on that in just a little bit, and then another body of standards called the 21st Century Skills that are found in our CTE programs. And those standards really crosswalk nicely together. So in trying to kind of wrap my own head around what's the difference in the Washington State Learning Standards and what's so important about our students being able to access those standards, particularly contrasting those standards with previous standards movements and really the previous goals of education systems in the United States. I think the analogy that works best for me, and hopefully it will resonate with you as well, is our old standards, even our fairly recent standards, were really more about preparing people for an economy where they could take their place making some kind of widget. The new standards and the habits of mind around the new standards, the types of mental discipline that students really need to hone and access to be able to function in our new economy, really require us to think more like the scene I think of as the movie scene in Apollo 13, where we're all going to have to collaborate on the fly. There's really no clear outcome other than failure is not an option. We've got to get those astronauts home. So that's really the new environment that many of us work in, and helping our kids access those standards will ensure that they have the opportunity to take their place competitively in our economy and our world going forward. So how ready are our kids? And what can we do as a school system in a focused way to make sure that our kids are more ready for the demands of the world every day? And so many of the things that Ms. Whitney covered in her report would be things I would highlight as well, but the work in adopting a new set of instructional materials, developing a new curriculum with the rigorous design process, and constantly revisiting that work. One of my favorite educational colleagues in another part of the state never talks about implementing anything in the context of being finished. He uses phrases like, in ELA, we're in the 6th year of implementation, we're in the 7th year of implementation. And I think that's so important because in education, we can think that we're done with something and then all of a sudden you've got a workforce that's turning over and people with various levels of induction. So staying really disciplined across the concept of a multi-year implementation of our curriculum is important. We know attending to our kids' socio and emotional needs, socio and emotional health being equally, if not more important than a guaranteed and viable curriculum. And the district's undertaken some really good work in terms of exploring and bringing on positive behavior interventions and supports. The acronym that you see is PBIS. Helping students really understand the context of what's required in the workplace through career pathways becomes or is a continued focus. And then ultimately also really looking at how we reimagine the high school. Those 4 initiatives should really, if done well and if paid attention to over time, should really help our kids take their rightful place in the world. And how are we going to measure that? So 3 of the indicators that we want to take a look at are graduation rates. Ultimately, graduating students is certainly a key function of a public school system. Looking at our state assessment results through the Smarter Balanced Assessment, and then wanting to be able to take a look at Pasco's context around the National Assessment of Educational Progress, also known as the NAEP. And try as we might, we weren't able to locate the NAEP data through OSPI in time for the presentation, but it's on my radar, and I'll stay with that until we're able to find a way to access that data and use it in a meaningful way. So what this also allows us to do is really look at how our students are doing in a benchmark way, which allows us to inquire around the practices of other schools and other systems and ask some direct questions around if we're seeing pockets of success, how can we learn from what other folks are doing? So one of the things that was pretty exciting was, far from starting from scratch, there's been some awfully impressive work done in Pasco. I was able to take a look at the data from about 2011 moving forward. And Pasco's graduation rates compared to the state graduation rates, first of all, they're awfully close to the state average, which I think is an encouraging place to start if we were just looking at benchmarking that. But over the last 5 years, Pasco's graduation rates are increasing roughly 4 times faster than the state average. So again, being able to build on the really great work of the district leaves us in a spot to go from, I think, good to great, and acknowledging the hard work and the prior work of folks in the school system, always an important thing to do. So I was hoping to have more than 1 year's data and say, well, if we're looking at college persistence and high school graduation, why would we look at 8th grade data? 8th grade data is really important to look at. And my bias for data, I think 8th grade data is maybe even the 2nd or 3rd most important indicator that a school system can be looking at, because we know that students across the country tend to make their decision relative to whether they're going to persist through high school in about the first 30 days of 9th grade. So that 8th grade data can really serve as an early warning indicator for our folks. So what we have both in Pasco and at the state level is 2014, 2015 is the baseline data for the Smarter Balanced Assessment, so there really isn't the possibility to go more columns out, and this just frames the current reality for 8th graders across our state and 8th graders in Pasco relative to proficiency in both ELA and math with the new assessment around the new standards. And I would reiterate, I think the work that's been undertaken and really looking at those 4 key activities and honing in on that work moving forward, I think will leave us in Pasco in a very similar place with regard to improvement on assessment results, much like what we already see with graduation rates and improvement there. So next steps. Keep doing what we're doing and stay really disciplined around the few initiatives that we've picked. And some reports that you can look forward to in the future, Suzanne Hall will be talking about just the status of the reimagining of the high school work, and she's on the docket, I believe, Tuesday, September 13th. So in short order, you'll have more context for that work. And in conclusion, there's a lot of work to be done, but I think we're poised in Pasco to really lever the great work that's been undertaken, and it dovetails, in my opinion, nearly perfectly with the board's focus on results. So thank you, and can I entertain any questions or discussion?
Thank you. I really appreciate you bringing this forward and a focus on 8th grade data. That sounds great. And using raw data, I think that's critical because I think it's a great starting point, and I think we can do so much better. So I really appreciate this, and I'm excited to get through this. I noticed one of the things was the 40% of people get jobs. What, did you say 75% of people?
Yeah, let me go back to that slide.
Second slide.
By 2020, 65% of jobs in the United States will require some level of post-secondary education, and the gap there is roughly 40% of our population at the present time is attaining some level of post-secondary education.
Okay, so that's the gap that I was looking at, because we don't just need AAs and college degrees. We also need, electricians and plumbers and people that get education, beauticians, people that get education beyond high school. And so that's the post-secondary, 65% currently, or 75%?
By 2020, the reliable forecasts are about 65% of all jobs in the United States will require some level of post-secondary education.
Okay.
And you're absolutely right. It might be a terminal degree. It could very well be a certificate, but some level of education beyond high school really required to be competitive in our workforce. And we know that the more education you have, by and large correlates with better wages and ultimately a better chance at stability.
Okay, thanks.
Could you comment your last slide prior to this one, where the career pathway alignment? I like that phrase. Can anyone expand on that, or what exactly does that entail? I like how that sounds, because that's been a concern of mine. Is that career exploration? What exactly is that?
And I don't want to necessarily put words in Brian Levitt's mouth, who's not here. But Brian and I have had some conversations just around really bringing that. And I don't know what your experience has all been, but I didn't have a great notion in high school relative to, what I had studied or why I was studying what I was studying, or what my course of study really might have prepared me for in terms of where where I would go with my future. And so the broad notion there is just making sure that our kids have a better understanding of, if I take these courses, I'm preparing myself for these types of vocational opportunities. Again, that's more the broad notion, and Brian really is the expert in terms of what's going on behind the scenes and at the school level around making that a more transparent process for our students.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's fantastic. I love what you said, that the students, and tying this back into how you mentioned that within the first month essentially of high school, kids are either checked in or checked out. And I think we need to do better, not just in our district, probably everywhere, do a better job of individualizing and getting to these kids early. What is your vision? What are your passions? And let's help you reach that. It's challenging because it needs to be individualized, so that takes some mentoring and some individual meeting, and so often with limited resources, we, with justification, focus on kids that are, say, very behind or that are somehow identified as high risk, and really every child deserves some sort of mentorship, some sort of opportunity to pursue their passion. I think a challenge in our district is we receive a lot of grants and funding for special programs that help certain kids. Like, I'll just bring up AVID. That's a good program for the kids that are in AVID, but then what about all the other kids that aren't in AVID that somehow fall through the cracks and don't get that information, learn those skills, have that opportunity to be prepared for post-secondary education, whether it be some sort of trade school or college career, that knowing what they need to do to reach their dream. Every student deserves to have some sort of guidance and help in that way. So I look forward to hearing more about that going forward.
I know this is one of the things that we talked about on our most recent retreat, is getting students focused on what they're going to do after school. I think a lot of people, a lot of students go through high school, they go through the motions, they learn, hopefully, but they get to the end of high school and it's, now what? My structured life has now come to an end, and it's critical that we start educating them and that they need to be preparing for what comes afterward. And so I think this is critical. It's interesting that they need to, somehow we've got to educate them on what's going to be in demand. There's a lot of people out there with college degrees that can't find work. They have a degree, but they're not, I shouldn't say can't find work, but they're not working in the field that they're working in. So along with preparing them for that, there needs to be some sort of education that there are some things that are in demand or going to be in demand. And so I know this is one of our, I don't know if it's one of our top goals, but I know it's one of the things that we discussed, and certainly something that we as a district need to be aware of. So thank you.
It does absolutely connect to the 5 big outcomes that we'll talk about at the next board meeting. 2 of those, so you're getting a preview because you're here. 2 of those, one is about every 9th grader being on track for graduation by the end of 9th grade. So that connects directly to that 8th grade data and that the critical nature of that involvement early on. And then the boards, 100% of our students will graduate and graduate with a plan. We say graduate college and career ready, but that was very important to you as a board when we were having those discussions around it's not enough for kids just to graduate. They have to graduate and know well before their senior year. Mr. Christensen, I think, even talked about down into middle school and in 9th grade, knowing what those options are. So this data directly connects with the board goals that we'll present, or that I'll present in 2 weeks.
Do we have career counselors at all 4 high schools?
We have guidance counselors who also provide their guidance. I don't know a lot about exactly what I'm kind of looking in the audience to see if there's someone, we can get you kind of a definition of exactly what they do. I know that part of what they do is do college, prep guidance and that sort of thing.
Okay. I'm not saying this is the right thing. I'm thinking back to when I was in high school, we had guidance counselors for each grade level that act like our guidance counselors here. But I think we also had a career center where their sole focus was helping people get scholarships, helping people understand the technical trades. It was one career center, I think, at each high school. I'm just curious how consistent we are across the district in treating that, and if there's any additional discussion to have there. But yeah, I'll wait to see what you guys send me.
Okay.
I too would love to see more scholarships. I just feel like sometimes our kids, if they have that, and I would love to see where that would fit in here, and what our scholarship program looks like, and how we encourage kids to apply for them, because some kids don't take advantage of them, but the more money that they get, the more likely they are to go on to college. So I'd love to see how scholarships fits into this plan.
The center ideas, I think we had something similar, President Lehrman, and I think that relied on kids kind of going in to the center, and if you didn't think you needed it, you didn't need it. I'd love to see something more established for everyone, that everyone gets some part of this. And with the 8th grade, a perfect example of this 8th grade importance is, I was just meeting with an 8th grader last week or 2 weeks ago, and tell me that he was taking Spanish and geometry and getting credit for that. So you're talking about in 8th grade, you can get high school credit. So you're already heading on this path of how you're going to succeed in high school. So it seems like this 8th grade time is really a good time to at least get some level of guidance, so that do all 8th graders realize that they can get high school credit in 8th grade if they will take a foreign language and an advanced math class? Probably not. I mean, I could probably do a poll. But anyways, that type of thing where everyone is given that information. Yeah, we could ask Ms. Stingley, but anyways, I'd love to see that.
So the Career Center we had, I think it wasn't just go in when you want. It was kind of consistently implemented throughout the district, that all the schools had one. And then, in your freshman year, every class, I think it was based on your homeroom or something. You'd go in at certain dates to talk about certain things. At another time you go talk about internships. We'd take surveys in there to understand what kind of learners we were, or what kind of careers would benefit us. But it was required. It wasn't go in at your leisure. Like even everyone would go in and talk about scholarships. Well, if you don't want to apply for any, you don't have to. But everyone was on the same page, and it was implemented consistently across the district.
Yeah, that sounds great. I missed out, I guess. Like maybe Mr. Christensen did not have something like that.
And I'm guessing the scholarships and financial aid, I think that's another key piece, just to explain to these kids that there's options. You can get this with scholarships or financial aid or a combination of two. You can do whatever you want to do, and so, yeah, something like that would be fabulous. Not that we're putting one more new thing out. It would just be nice if we could go in that direction.
I was just going to say, I'm sure everybody's out there going, oh, that'd be great. Now, how are we going to do this? We've got all this other stuff we've got to focus on too. So I think we need to be aware of that. But certainly we can sit up here and say lots of grand things, and it comes down to the people who actually do the work to make it happen. So thank you for your efforts.
And we know that work's already going on. We'd love to hear about it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. We're excited to have you on our team, and thank you for that presentation, first in a series on student achievement.
Well, thank you. I'm grateful to be here and glad to have that first one under my belt.
Sure, we'll open it up to the community. We had board discussion. Is there any community members that would like to comment on that report? Without any community feedback, we'll move on to action item 10A.
Mr. Christensen will be leading us, or the board, in a discussion and ask for a board recommendation for approval of the 2017 legislative priorities. These priorities were discussed during a study session last board meeting.
Yes. All right. How do I? How do we get rid of this? All right, Board President Larriman, fellow board members, Ms. Whitney, as you know, last board meeting we talked about this, or last study session we did. So tonight we need to take action on what is going to be our legislative priorities, or at least the start of them for this upcoming session. These are capital items here, capital priorities. The reason we need to set these now is because the sooner we get these in the queue with our elected officials, our representatives in Olympia, the more likely they are to be at the top of their list when it comes time to make their capital budget requests. We had Representative Theringer here a couple weeks ago, and he is the capital budget chairman, and he's the one who I think has the final say. Of course, he's on a committee, but he will have the final say, and we were fortunate to have him come. He happened to be here for some other meetings, and he was able to come and see our facility. We're not sure exactly who our representatives are going to be this year. It looks like in the 9th district It's probably going to stay the same, but in the, is it the 16th, I guess, is Walla Walla. It looks like Representative Neely has a fairly good shot at being a repeat there. The other representative, we don't know. That's a completely open field. There's not an incumbent there. And then Maureen Walsh has moved into the Senate, and I believe she's running unopposed. She's been a great advocate for us in Olympia in getting this money. But we need to identify what we're going to do, what request we're going to make, so we can get it into them. And the sooner we get it into them, the more likely it is to be higher up in their level or higher up in their priorities. So, as we talked about last time, we have purchased the senior center. Our request last year was for $2.5 million. That would cover half of the cost. And at that time, we were strictly talking about ECAP classrooms. We anticipated we could get 10 classrooms out of that facility. We did, and I remember meeting with Representative Theringer last year and him asking, what if we give you part of it this year and you come back next year for the rest? You may not be aware, but last year was just a supplemental budget. It wasn't a big capital budget, so they weren't making any large grants last year. Now this year is the new budget year, so we'll have a much better chance of getting a bigger chunk of the money. So we're going to request this year, based on our discussion from our last meeting, we're going to request $1 million. This is lower than the 2.5 we requested last year, but as you're aware also, we've talked about using that facility more for some of our special education, early learning, as opposed to all ECAP. So, and I think Dr. Richardson had visited with, I want to say Federal Way, but it wasn't, Franklin Pierce. And I think this is in line with the numbers that they asked and received for their early learning center as well. So the proposal is for $1 million to go with a capital request for $1 million. That brings it down a little bit, gives us a better chance of getting that number. As you can see, we put some conditions on there that up to 75% of the new classrooms will be dedicated to smaller K-3 SAS class size in existing elementary schools. That means we would pull some of our special ed classrooms out of their current buildings and bring them into the senior center. And then we would dedicate a minimum of 25% of the new classrooms to ECAP. So I believe that with this as our priority, we can go and have a good chance of getting some money. Again, it's going to depend on who's elected and what their priorities are. But if we can approve these now, get them in front of them, start talking to them now, then we have a much better chance. So that's the first one. The second one is to for another round of funding for this K-3 class size reduction. As you know, last time we missed it. I think we were 4 or 5 slots out of the money. We're pretty confident that if there is another round, that we would be highly likely to get some. In addition to this request, we want to make a request for more equitable distribution of those funds. Some ideas are listed down there in the italics. This wouldn't be part of our legislative priority. It would just be the top 2 numbered items there. So that is the presentation. So I think what we can do is make a motion, and then if there's any discussion, we can discuss it. So are you ready for a motion, Mr. President?
Is there additional board discussion?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Mr. Christensen. I think this fairly accurately describes what we discussed, and we had a good, detailed discussion. And I think the wording is very good on it and summarizes our goals of, especially with the additional grant funding that we'd like there to be another round and have it be more equitable. Which we were not the only district that did not feel that the last one was equitable. And I think the first one is a good compromise and a good clear. I know you'd mentioned that we need to have a clear what's going to happen, and we don't know the exact number of classrooms, but saying that we're going to do a certain amount for this and a certain amount for this, both of which will benefit the class size reduction and or ECAP, which is what they're focused on right now. I did want to ask if someone could clarify that looking at the senior center, I know we're right now evaluating the A&E and whatnot. The classrooms that I think they've given an estimate 10 to 15 or somewhere in that ballpark, that does not include additional amount of office space, administrative space, is that correct? Or would those classrooms, some of those classrooms need to be the administrative space, the receptionist space, if that makes sense? So, and does that make sense, Mr. Nunemaker? I don't know, maybe you could speak to that. Is that allowing for sufficient additional space? Because that was one feedback I got from when I visited the Learning Center in Tacoma, that some of their administrative office space where people come in and are interacted with and where they work together was not adequate. And so they had 12 classrooms, which is great, but then this little tiny administrative space where they do assessments, where they do have therapy rooms, where they have what's called Child Find, things where they do evaluations on the kids that are delayed, was inadequate. And I just kind of wanted to know if we could have a clarification on that.
Yeah, right now, excuse me, as you mentioned, Mr. Richardson, the design is in process. Matter of fact, we have a team going to Franklin Pierce tomorrow, and we'll be visiting the Early Learning Center, and we'll be able to see some of the things you just discussed. Right now, the Senior Center is looking at 12 classrooms. We'll look at it and see if we can get up to maybe 14 classrooms at it when we're going through the design process. And that would be just classrooms. Then there would be administrative space, and those other needs would be in other areas of that facility. However, how that would lay out yet, we don't know yet.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I just want to mention this, just put that in our minds, board member, as we're discussing this and looking forward, that is a key component. You know, we can add another classroom or two and make all that extra space that's essential less meaningful, less efficient, or, you know, finding that right balance is going to be one of the keys, I think, as we decide how it's going to be designed and divided up.
So lessons learned from Franklin Pierce.
Yeah.
You know, my major concern with this is we're so successful at finding space and building portables and using this rather than for the preschool that we so desperately need to get our kids on target for kindergarten so that they can be reading at grade level by the 3rd grade, that we're missing out on two things. Because we're so successful, we're not getting this K-3 grant money, and we're not able to serve our kids we're not able to get these kids at the level they need to be taught at a kindergarten level. So I hope we're going in the right direction. I know that we need the money from the K-3 class sizes in order to do this, but I just feel like we're in a catch-22 situation. You know, whenever we succeed in this, then we're not going to get the money. So we're going to succeed in being able to lower this. I'm guessing Kennewick didn't need the money to lower their class sizes, so they left them big, and instead they have enough money for 3 new elementary schools. So anyway, so I'm a little frustrated with the only up to 25%. You know, we need to do something to get our kids ready. And I know this is only a piece of the puzzle, and we need to educate our families. We need to educate the preschools in the area. We need to do lots of things that are going on. But this is such a... Anyway, I'm just disappointed in what we're doing for our kids and getting them ready for kindergarten, the ones that are the most needy, the ones that are the most behind, that quite frankly hold back the whole district, because you have to teach to these kids that don't know that you can't teach at a normal kindergarten level starting out. You have to get the kids caught up, and it's so hard to get them at reading level by 3rd grade when they come in so far behind in kindergarten. So, and if they're not at reading level by third grade, then they're much, much, much less likely to graduate from high school. So I'm sad about that. I don't know how to get around it. It's a catch-22 situation. So I'm really disappointed with the first point. I absolutely am thrilled about the second point. We need to get that. We need to get that funding, but I don't like the first one.
So here's something, and I don't think, stick with me here, I'm not going to get off topic on it, but the exciting thing is with our operational expectations, it's our job to say what we want to do, and with these goals we've set, we've showed that we want to increase kindergarten readiness. It's a goal that ties into many of the other goals that we came up with. And so we're giving this over to Miss Whitney and her team to implement. And I know they have some ideas. Mr. Bowles gave me a book on, and I read over it when I was on vacation or skimmed through it, on kind of getting synergies and efficiencies through all the programs that are available to pre-K through third grade in your district, in your city, in your area, and really building on those synergies. It's kind of a blueprint, I'd call it, a 10-step way to increase those efficiencies. And so Miss Whitney and her team can use ideas like that to increase our kindergarten readiness, also our K-3 performance, to the best of their ability with the space that we have. I know it's not as big as we were aiming for a year and a half ago, but I think we all have faith in our superintendent and the district team that they'll use that space efficiently and build on these efficiencies that are available out there.
Steve, how did you talk to the representative at all when he was here? Is he still positive about using 25% of these classrooms to increase the ECAP?
We didn't get into those details with him. We hadn't officially passed it as a priority yet, but
Are they going to buy this? If they're going to be like, okay, number 2's for K3, we're already putting all this money through K3, and now this is what the majority of this building is going to be, is to increase the K3 capacity?
So I think that is, we're going to have to be careful and strategic in our presentation to the legislature or to the different legislators this upcoming session. All of them recognize, I shouldn't say all of them, but the ones that we were dealing closely with recognize that we only got a part of what we were requesting. So they're fully expecting us to come back. We're going to have to be right up front and tell them that, look, because, and I think these 2 points go together, because we missed out on part of that K-3 grant, we've got to put our students somewhere. We've got classroom space that we've got special education students in that we can bring into a facility that will, our expectation is it'll benefit them to be together. And we're doing that because we need classroom space for our other students. We're still committed to ECAP. At least 25% of them will be new ECAP slots. It's not just taking ECAP slots out of existing classrooms and bringing them into the center. It'll be new ECAP slots, but I think this is a compromise. It's a reasonable compromise, and I think we just have to communicate that to them, and I think they'll be understanding, and it gives us a little more strength on our second point there, that you've required of us to reduce our class size. You've got to give us space to do it. So,
Are we continuing to shoot ourselves in the foot by succeeding in getting these classroom sizes to the size they want us? Because I could see them looking at us and saying, we don't care if you have 200 portable classrooms. You got down to the size we wanted. Why in the world would we give you more money? Because you're already there.
So I think, if you're asking me, I'm not the expert, but I don't know that we're not doing the right thing by doing what's best for educating our students, by putting them in classrooms.
Anyway,
it may not get us in the right spot.
That's a law that we have
for
to adhere to. It's not necessarily the best way to spend money to get our kids to where they need to be, but that's okay.
Yeah, but so the stars didn't line up. We didn't get the money this time. I don't think, I don't think it's wise necessarily to strategically plan what's going on with the legislature. We have to strategically plan based on what's best for us. And we need to certainly be cognizant of what they're doing and how it affects us, but I think this is a great compromise. I think these two priorities, again, they're capital requests. We'll establish other priorities, or not priorities necessarily, but positions, requests of the legislature this year. But the reason we're doing this now is because we need to get these capital requests in early. But I think I think these are good, solid positions to take, and to take now for what we've got. It isn't everything we would like, but I think these are very reasonable, and probably give us as good a chance as any to get additional funding, capital funding this year.
You know what I think we should add to that? That I thought I'd put a third bullet in, and put on that third bullet, if we get K-3 grant funding to reduce K-3 class sizes, we will create more ECAP. You know, if we get 2, then we will create more ECAP in 1. I think that we should give them some kind of a promise with that.
That's a different thing. The K-3 size has nothing to do with ECAP.
And why is that the second point on the number 1 thing?
So,
because that's specifically about the facility that we're requesting funds for, but what you're talking about with the K-3 class size reduction, that has nothing to do with ECAP. That's a separate thing.
so it's forced us here.
Right.
The fact that we missed funding, missed part of the grant this time, has forced us into bringing some of those special ed early learning into this facility, which reduces our ECAP, right? But trying to tie those together, I think would make it too difficult for a presentation there. I think every district, well, I shouldn't say every, but most of the districts in the state don't have space. Everybody's got this problem. So we're not going to be the only district saying, hey, look, you've got to increase capital budget towards facilities because of the class size reduction. Everybody's going to be telling them that they're going to hear that loud and clear this year. I don't think making any promises related to ECAP is going to give us any favors there. So I think this is probably as good as we can get it in a clear, understandable way that our legislators can get their minds around and understand. So.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to clarify one thing just in case, so people aren't confused if they watch this later. Since you mentioned how, we're going to try maybe to put some special ed students together in the center. I've heard the concern from some that that's horrible. What are we doing? Why are we taking all the special ed kids and taking them away from general ed students and putting them all in a building? But this is the opposite, because where they are right now are developmental preschool students, our autistic pre-K classrooms are essentially at Captain Gray and McClintock, whereas our ECAP Head Start classrooms are not at those schools. They're at Emerson, Chess, Longfellow, Whittier. So those kids right now do not have any meaningful interaction with other similar aged peers, typical developing peers, 3 or 4-year-olds. They're in a building with K-6 students, but they have no meaningful interaction with them. This actually will increase their interaction and inclusion with typically developing peers, not decrease it. So this is actually going to improve the services they get. And I just want to make sure, because I've heard some people express that in the community, that fear, and this is actually going to increase and improve dramatically from 0 to whatever opportunities we provide them to interact with the other typically developing peers in the building.
So just to clarify that point, Ms. Whitney, you can confirm, this is an early learning center, special ed and so forth.
The senior center,
Yes,
we would currently be using it for pre-K students, correct?
yes.
Yeah.
That's
We haven't decided the exact makeup, but that's what we
Right.
voted on when if we go back and look at when we voted to purchase the senior center, it would be some combination of those classrooms. And so
Yeah.
what we've proposed here is, I just want to clarify that with the special ed, the idea that we're just going to move all special ed 3 and 4-year-olds into a building and put them away somewhere, and we're taking them away from typically developing peers, is absolutely the opposite of what's happening. It's going to increase it from 0 right now to much more opportunity.
So
Will
I
we
think,
be able,
Go
will
ahead.
we be able to get to the state number that they want us to for our kindergarten through third grade class reductions. Will we be able to achieve that this year? So,
I don't know the answer to that question. It's hard to predict kinder because we're enrolling kinders right now. And I, off the top of my head, don't know what our kinder numbers were last time, but I could certainly look into it. We could use last year's to project, but kinder's tough to estimate because they're enrolling them. They're new enrollees. So I can do some research and see if we can make some predictions.
Is it, at this point, the state has given people money that haven't been able to get their class sizes down. Is it beneficial to use all of this space to try to reduce class sizes when we might not get the money to build a new school and permanently reduce with brick and mortar classrooms our class sizes?
I think what you're asking, we kind of talked about this before, that, we just, like Mr. Christensen said, we just do what's best for our kids. So we can artificially, like some districts have done, allow our class sizes to be much bigger with the hope that the state would follow the similar type path in their formula that actually OSPI determined the exact formula, that they would follow the similar formula when they decide on the next round of grants. But I absolutely think that's not the right approach to take. We do what's best by our kids, provide them the best education, and then we work with our legislators to, like we're doing, to try to, and like many other districts are doing, to make sure that when they do this again, it's more equitable and that we're not left out. And so,
But part of the problem is that's not something that we feel is best for our kids. That is state imposed, that we have to, because a law was passed, we have to lower class sizes when there's not even ample data that says lowering them from 19 to 16 is really going to make that much difference. It's, the best data is for K1, and it doesn't, from the data I've looked at, it doesn't go into that much detail. So I know we have to do what's best for our kids. Leaving them a little bit bigger in order to get more money to get a new school and have more room for our ECAP could be what's best for our kids, period. It could be what's best for our kids. Because class size isn't always the best way to spend your money to get results toward graduation. So anyway.
yeah, so no one's getting to the class size. They set this high standard, and I don't think any, even the districts that got money aren't going to get to that standard. It's just trying to improve the situation, because I don't think anyone would disagree that a kindergarten class with 30 kids is very difficult to manage, and the teacher doesn't need a study to prove that. It's just they can be more successful and helpful if they have 20 children even, or 24, than 30, and so that's what we do. We do the best we can with what we have, and not play games. We just, but we don't need any research or studies to show. We just go ask any kindergarten teacher if they'd rather have 22 kids in their class or 30, and what's easier. And
Well, I'd like 5 kids in my class. I could do amazing things. The thing is, you have to use the numbers in order to know what a teacher can handle, how kids can achieve the very most. So anyway.
yeah, I think we're doing that. We're doing the best we can with what we have.
So I'll open it up for audience comments or questions to the board before I entertain a motion. But I think I heard the term early learning center used. I think as a board and as a district, we should be careful with that term. We've had confusion already in the past with our last couple bonds calling things early learning center. Is it a pre-K? Is it a kinder center? Is it a K-3 center? So I think we should just be specific and call this what it is. It's going to be a pre-K center, and be real careful with that early learning center terminology. So any comments from the public?
I'll just add to that. I think that's a good point, President Lehrman. We should come up with a name or something that we all use. Right now, we've called it the senior center, So I think if we're going to call it, so it's very confusing to people. I agree we need to all use the same term, but we haven't come up with that yet. So people ask, and we call it the senior center, we call it an early learning center, we call it the pre-K center, I agree, let's decide on something and call it that, and everyone stick with that. Right now it's been called the senior center, so.
So I think we're moving towards, we're going to call it the pre-K center, and we'll see on our consent agenda tonight that we're going to ask for approval of recommendation of architectural engineering firm for the pre-K center project. So that's probably a good term, and we'll be consistently use that term.
I think that's a great term because there's been so much confusion around early learning center.
Okay, so Any comments or questions from the public? With no questions or comments from the public, I'd entertain a motion.
President Lehrman, I make a motion that we adopt these two priorities as presented here for legislative priorities for 2017 legislative session.
Second?
There's a motion and a second to approve the legislative priorities for capital projects for the 2017 legislative session as presented. Additional discussion from the board?
So you'll notice it says Early Learning Center. I don't think our legislators are going to care.
No, and I don't want to belabor this, but in all honesty, I'll just say straight up, I was not on the board last year. I think it's a huge mistake to call this a pre-K center because to the point that was just made recently about this book that you were given, President Lehrman, about a blueprint to utilize all local resources synergistically for early learning readiness, kindergarten readiness, whatever you want to call it. That includes in most early learning centers, pre-K center, call it whatever you want, not just pre-K, it's much more than just that. And in our community where there's two different things that we're bringing up that were community issues. One was having McClintock be an early learning center or and then there was the idea of us building this pre-K center. So it is very confusing, but we're talking about different things, and I think it's absolutely preferable to call it an early learning center because it's not just pre-K, there's a lot more that's involved in it. And the point is that we just need to be clear. All call it the same thing and call it what it really is. If you look at the other ones across our state, they're called early learning centers because they're more than just pre-K. But again, I don't think I think they're fine with however no one's going to make this argument. This is a community issue that we face in Pasco, not something that they're going to make a fuss about.
So additional discussion, is there a motion to amend the language in the legislative priorities here to replace early learning center with pre-K center?
Personally, I would prefer Early Learning Center. It just makes sense to me. When you say pre-K, to me, that limits it. Not that we wouldn't use it for pre-K and maybe exclusively for pre-K, but if some point we wanted to put something else in there, I wouldn't want it labeled a pre-K center personally.
I absolutely agree. Ms. Lankin, you agree? You're nodding your head? Okay. So
I agree.
So, okay. This is slightly different situation than we're talking about where we have a bond and we're passing it for a certain use, but okay.
Well, I still agree with the pre-K simply because the Early Learning Center in our district has been used as kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. That's the definition of an Early Learning Center. I would move then that if we are going to call this an Early Learning Center, then we need to stop calling our other things an Early Learning Center. We need to have some consistency across our district. Early learning isn't K through 3 then. So that's to me why it's confusing. To me, this is a pre-K. That's what it's going to be, is serve all pre-K. It's going to serve, but we're not going to serve anybody kindergarten and up. So, I mean, it might limit it, but we can change the name if we, just like we did with Captain Gray, change the name later. So if we're going to do that, I just think we need to redefine what we're using early learning as and in the future.
Yeah, I disagree with what you said that the definition of early learning, there's lots of different definitions of that. And additionally, what other facilities are we calling early learning centers right now in our district?
They originally called the McClintock.
Oh, that's what I'm saying, but not now.
It was only a K.
That was last year. No, we don't have anything right now that we're calling early learning centers. We're defining what we're doing now going forward, trying to use what we learned as a district and community last year with a proposed pre-K center and an early learning center, or whatever you want to call McClintock, how it was originally presented. So let's just establish what's the right thing going forward. But there's nothing right now that we're referring as an early learning center other than this.
Mr. Lehrman.
Ms. Thornton has a comment.
Thank you. Related to the language that's in this legislative priority, the limited purpose of this language is to present to the legislature, and it defines your legislative ask. And so you would want to define what you're asking for, but
give yourself as much flexibility as possible in perhaps the future uses for the money. So I could certainly see a scenario where here with the legislature, you'd refer to it as an early learning center, giving the district future flexibility around how we might need to use the center, but internally here locally defining it as, for purposes right now, a pre-K center.
That makes sense.
Okay, that was a healthy discussion, informative for all, I think. So we have a motion and a second on the table to we said a motion and a second to adopt these legislative priorities for the 2017 legislative session as presented. Can we get a roll call, Ms. Smith?
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Ms. Lambton?
Yes.
Mr. Lehrman?
Yes.
Mrs. Phillips?
You know, I think we need to go forward with this. So I'm going to say a tentative yes. I'm excited to see where we're going with our ECAP because
Yes.
I was hoping we were getting to the point of more. So I'm excited to see where we're going. But yes, because we need to go through with this. I want more with our ECAP. So yes, long version.
Dr. Richardson?
Yes.
All right, motion carries to approve the legislative priorities for capital projects for the 2017 legislative session as presented. Thank you, Mr. Christensen.
I gotta say, I thought this would be a short segment.
Moving on to action item 10B.
You did great. It's good discussion. I just thought it would be cool. So Randy, if you do a better job than that last presenter, we'll get through this quickly.
I will see what I can do. That's going to be a little difficult. The Board President, Mr. Lehrman, Superintendent Whitney, and board members, tonight the district requests to move forward with the purchase of 76 acres. This parcel is number 115-80041 in the amount of $2,766,635.40. Shows up better up there. You can see where Chiawana High School is here, and then the upper location here would be the 76 acres. This would be considered for a new high school. This parcel is on Burns Road and is just west of Road 100. The use of this site would be intended for a high school. If you look down at the second slide here, this portion right here that you see kind of cut out, that's a irrigation pond that the district would split with another landowner. This would provide us with the irrigation we need for our property. That's why the purchase is going to be partial of this lot, and that will help supply us the irrigation we need for that property. The district will come back at a later board meeting with a final request for approval for this property. Right now, we're just asking to move forward on the purchase. So at this time, the district would ask for board approval to move forward with the purchase of parcel number 115-80041, 76 acres. I can answer any questions.
The money to purchase this land, is this coming from the last bond and money that was included for purchase of land, or is this separate from that?
I'm lucky tonight to have Executive Director of Business and Finance, Howard Roberts, is going to help answer that question. So I'll call Howard up.
Or is it a split? Maybe we had some money left for land from that bond, and anyway.
Randy warned me, so no, it will not come from bond proceeds from the 2013 bond. Those are pretty much all called for. By the time we do Pasco Phase 3, there's not going to be a lot there. And we did spend some earlier proceeds on land. So we've got a couple transfers that have come from the general fund. One is the 7.5 million that we've talked about, and the need that we have there. It looks like we can still accommodate that. The other piece is at the beginning of this last budget session, like we always do, we transferred money from the general fund for portables, not knowing how many we needed. We wanted to fund as many as we could through impact fees. We only ended up needing 4 portables. Those can be covered by impact fees. So there's another transfer. And when we look at those, there's enough money, at least as the senior center is currently configured with both the purchase and the remodel to finish that project, as well as to get these 78 between those 2 transfers. So that's a long answer, but that's...
No, that's perfect. And I know you've given us some of that information before in previous meetings. I just wanted to make it clear now, since we're talking about it at this time, if people are just listening right now to this presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nunemaker. I'll open it up right now first for comment from the public. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve the district move forward with the purchase of 75 acres for $2,766,635.40, including applicable fees and closing costs for parcel number 115180041.
I second it.
It's 76 acres.
Oh, guess I should put my glasses on. Thank you. 76 acres.
I still second it.
So there's a motion and a second to approve the district moving forward with the purchase of 76 acres for $2,766,635.40, including applicable fees and closing costs for parcel number 115180041. Would the board like to have additional discussion on the motion? Go ahead.
I'll just say one thing briefly, because that is something else I've heard. With our upcoming proposed bond, adding space to Chiawana, I've heard some people mention that that's going to maybe limit the time or limit our chances of building another high school sooner because we're adding space to Chiawana. And I don't know if anyone wants to comment on this. My comment to that would be that currently, as it stands at Chiawana, we had someone explain to us that there are over 20 teachers without a classroom and all. So even if we didn't add a single student to Chiawana, we need those classrooms just to provide an equitable environment for those teachers and students to have a classroom where they can find their teacher, where they can find the resources they need. The teacher can have the resources they need. So that would be my response to that concern, but I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts on that. But that is a concern I've heard in the community, that why are we doing this, and also right now proposing to add space to Chiawana High School.
So I would, I've had those same thoughts. What does that do to us? That just pushes us out further. That just justifies extending the opening of a new high school. And yeah, I wish we didn't have to, but I'm afraid that if we didn't do that, we'd start moving portables in there. And I wouldn't care if we didn't put another portable in the district, but I'm not sure that's reality either. Personally, I like this. We've got to be proactive at finding land for facilities, and even elementary schools. I'm concerned as our city grows, if we don't get out ahead of this, that we're going to be challenged. And so this is a lot of money for a facility, or for a parcel that we may not use for, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years. But if we don't buy it now, there'll be homes there and we won't have a place to put it. So I am in favor of this. I don't know, Dr. Richardson, I wish I knew how to answer that question. If we don't add space there, our high schools are just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And
They're already the biggest in the state, so.
yeah, and we're going to move portable in.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think that's,
yeah, and I've had the same concerns, but I think that's why, and I'm looking forward to this this long-term capital facilities task force, or this, because I think that's one of the things we need. We need to be able to look out there and say, okay, based on current growth and projected growth, we will need another middle school, and we will be able to afford another middle school at this time. I think that's one of the things. There's people that want another middle school now. And they don't, if not now, when? And if we have this long-term plan, and I'm hoping that this is what it looks like, is we can say, okay, in 2022, we're on track to build another middle school. In 2028, another high school, or whatever the dates are. And at these years, another elementary school in these approximate locations. I think that would be critical for us going forward.
And I agree with that, because I feel like the next priority, if we're not going to add another middle school to this bond, the next priority will be to build up a middle school and then the high school. And this is going to make it doable until we get to the point where we can build another high school. So I don't think it prolongs it. I think it makes it doable until we can get there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think those are good sentiments. And I think some people will gasp at I know you're just throwing out 10, 15, 20 years. Maybe they think 5 years or 10 years, wait that long when their schools will be 4,000, but.
Well, and that's the beauty of this long-term task force, is we can get an idea. Part of the challenge is we have the need. We just don't have the ability. We don't have the financing. That's where we run into challenges. But this hopefully will give us a picture of what it'll look like. We'll align our bond capacity up with our need, and we can get some idea of what it looks like. And if it really looks terrible, we'll know and be able to take measures, hopefully, to minimize the impact. But
I think, thank you to the district for looking out for this. I think the district has a documented history of being forward-thinking in regards to land purchases and making sure that we have the land in the district inventory before we get to the emergency state and running a bond and then trying to go look for it. If you read in the paper, some districts run into that problem where they're passing a bond and they don't have the property and don't know, where they're going to be able to put it. So thank you to the district staff for being forward-thinking like they have in the past, and I think this looks like a good purchase.
Yeah, the last comment I'll make is that right around this topic, another misconception I've heard is, well, why are you adding this permanent space to Curie and Chiawana instead of just portables like everywhere else in the district? And the difference is that those buildings were built very wisely to be added onto. Now, none of us, I think, want these massive mega schools, but that's just the situation we're in. So I would love to have every elementary school be like Markham and have 400 students or 500 students, but we just are not in that position. And so Chiawana and Curie were built to easily add on some extra classrooms to the building. And so it would be silly to not do that in my mind. So that's another reason. But I agree, this is a good purchase and a good location for us to make forward thinking.
Okay, with the motion and the second on the table, I'd ask Ms. Smith to call the roll.
Dr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
yes.
Ms. Lamkin?
Yes.
Mr. Lehrman?
Yes.
Mrs. Phillips?
Yes.
The motion carries to approve the district to move forward with the purchase of 76 acres for $2,766,635.40, including applicable fees and closing costs for parcel number 115180041. All right, next we move on to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have personnel, warrant approval, the interlocal agreement for school resource officer between Pasco School District Number 1 and the City of Pasco, Washington. We have Pasco High School Phase 3 Project Change Order Number 1. And we have the approval of recommendation of architectural and engineering firm for the pre-K center project. Discussion from the board?
We talked about this earlier, but just so people that are watching at home and that review the agenda, by approving this approval recommendation for A&E firm for the pre-K center project, that does not bind us to call this whatever pre-K center. Just want to put that out there. When I vote yes for the consent agenda, we can come up, once we get the design and decide, we can then decide what we will name it and this does not obligate us to call it a pre-K center
Or senior center.
or a senior center.
Correct.
Pre-senior
We'll all be
center.
senior Sunday, right? So they are pre-seniors.
Well, it's currently still the senior center. Hey, I've got a question here on this, and I guess I can ask this offline, but I'm looking at this change order for Pasco High School. Are you familiar with that, Randy? The change order for Pasco High School, Fowler General Construction, is this having to do with the new science labs we're putting in there?
Yeah, this is on the Pasco High School Phase 3.
Is Fowler the general on that?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was somebody else.
Right, Tim Fowler? Yeah. Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
Welcome to remodels, right? Unforeseen conditions.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
There's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Ms. Smith, please call the roll.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Ms. Lantern?
Yes.
Mr. Lerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Phillips?
Yes.
Dr. Richardson?
Yes.
Motion carries to approve the consent agenda as presented. All right, next we have future agenda items.
So next board meeting on the 23rd, we will be days away from the first day of school and talking about special education facilities placements in a study session starting at 4:30. I will be doing the third final board governance planning or board governance board report. And then we're also continuing our focus on customer service initiatives. Mr. Nunemaker will be reporting out on an electronic work order submission that was a result of kind of multiple dots connecting across the system, and what is going to result in a great opportunity for us to, again, continue to actualize those operational expectations. So we're looking forward to that.
All right, tonight we have no executive session, and so thank you for attending and your interest in Pasco Public Schools, and the meeting's adjourned.
Pound that thing.